Hello, I welcome one of you all to this interfaith dialogue from the Abrahamic Faith Roundtable. If I may start by making some opening remarks and quoting from the late Dr. Martin Luther King. I quote, "Too seldom do we see people in their true humanness. A spiritual myopia limits our vision to external accidents. We see men as Jews or Gentiles, Catholics or Protestants, Chinese or Americans, Negroes or white. We fail to see them as fellow human beings, made from the same basic stuff as we are molded in the same divine image." The good neighbor looks beyond their external accidents and discerns those inner qualities that make all men human and therefore brothers. It gives me great pleasure to start this discussion, and I'd like to hand the floor across to Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. Shalom, Rabbi, how are you?
Shalom, thank you so much, Goji. And I said to you off camera, so many of us are envious of your accent. If we could only speak like you, we would sound so brilliant. So thanks for reminding us what an accent can do. I want to also say thank you to my fellow panelists who are members of Abrahamic Faith, because I think it's a reminder to people that we are all related to one another. There's a Muslim proverb, and Imam Tahir is on the panel. I think he can attest to it. It says, God created one blood of the human family, which means that we are many and we are one. And so we're related. And I think that's the vision that Martin Luther King had for America and for the world, that people to look beyond boundaries of color, beyond boundaries of race, and to recognize that there is that connection as creatures of God, that we all have that spiritual birth certificate that makes us belong to one human family. I also think that we recognize that no one has the right to say, my religion is better than yours. I look at my religion as I do my own parent, my mom, for example. To me, my mom was the best. But to you, your mom was the best. Therefore, I say, to me, my religion is the best, but that doesn't negate the possibility that for you, your religion is the best. So I think we all recognize that we are many and we are one. We can all be partners in this miracle of life and do whatever we can to enhance it for one another. As a matter of fact, it was God who said to Abraham, Heye bracha, which means you be a blessing. You make a difference in the world. So when there is when you look at the Bible, the first question asked in the Bible is what? Where are you? The question that was asked, right, as the Garden of Eden, as the creations they were hiding. God says, where are you? And I think all of us realize that whenever the challenge arises around us, we have to ask, where are we? Are we making a difference in keeping with that statement that was given to Abraham? And I think when you look back at Abraham, you recognize also that he brought into the world ethical monotheism, not only belief in God, but also behavior towards one another that was predicated on respect. All of us familiar with the story of Abraham pleading on behalf of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, they weren't Jews, but all Abraham said was, God, can you destroy cities? There may be 10 good people in the midst of the city. He didn't say 10 good Jews. He said 10 good people, 10 righteous souls. So it was Abraham who said, it's not enough to believe in God. We also have to believe in the goodness of one another and stand up for one another. So if you look at the Jewish Bible, there are 613 commandments, not just 10 as in the movie, but the Bible actually has 613 commandments because it tells all of us that it's not just about belief, it's about behavior. I think back to my own father, who had a retail grocery business, and near the scale, he had a Bible, right near the scale. And it reminded him, yes, it's not enough to go to the synagogue and pray, it's also what I do the rest of the week. I can't just talk about honesty and integrity in the sanctuary. It has to be practiced out in the street. So the Bible near the scale was that reminder of that. So I think that all of us who are children of Abraham know that in our legacy is that we have to make a difference. When my parents came to this country, they were helped by a number of groups. One of the groups were the nuns of St. Mary's Church in Lynn, Massachusetts. They're Catholic, members of the Abrahamic faith, but they also recognized that it's not enough for me just to pray for my own people. I have to pray for the welfare of others and do something to help others. So I just want to conclude with this thought. There is a famous question asked in Jewish tradition, when does the day begin? And there's a discussion back and forth. Some say, well, when you could distinguish between blue and green, blue and white. And then one person says, when the day begins, when you could look out at that early hour and see the other as belonging to your human family, as seeing the other as a friend. So I am privileged to be here with people who I see not only as members of the human family, not only as friends, but as members of my own family. So thank you so much, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Okay, thank you so much, Rabbi Patasnik. I'd like to ask a question to Iman Adem. Iman, salam alaikum. It's good to see you, and it's good to meet you, Iman. Do you want to?
Salam wa rahmatullah. Alaikum salam.
Salam alaikum, brother. I'm so pleased.
Adam is my son, and this is his account.
Okay, it's all right. Salam alaikum. I'll say Iman. Salam alaikum, Iman.
Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so pleased to meet you, Iman. I'd like to put a question to you regarding the Abrahamic Accords. How far would you say that the Abrahamic Accords grew directly out of 4,000 years old mystical bonds between the two faiths, mainly the Islamic faith and Jewish faith, and that people extending back to a common father, mainly Abraham and Ibrahim, and other patriarchs and matriarchs?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm honored and privileged to be amongst these great scholars, and especially my mentor, my dear friend, Rabbi Patasnik. And as his follower, a student in that sense, it's easy for me to speak, but it's not easy for anybody else to speak after Rabbi Patasnik. So if he speaks, then the rest, they have to listen. 2 years ago, I had an invitation to speak to a Catholic Muslim dialogue about Ibrahim, with our common friend between me and Rabbi Joe, Father Brian McQueenie. So we're at Princeton University. Prophet Ibrahim, or Abraham, or even Abram, as in the Quran is written in two shapes, two forms, Ibrahim and Ibram. It's a form of inclusiveness between the Arabic language, or the language that was spoken then when Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was living. In our Holy Quran, Allah Almighty commands Muslims, believers, that they should take Prophet Ibrahim as an example, as a role model in their lives, in terms of being firm in their faith, never wavering, to stand up what is right, and when the time is right, also some people they speak the truth after the time passed. That's denying the truth. It's not speaking for the truth. Yes, these examples in our Holy Quran are purposely, written in such a way that we Muslims always seek to have our hand of cooperation or hand of working together, whether our Jewish brothers or Christian brothers. And we have the same prophets that are role models for us as believers. We, as Muslims, we are not, fully committed to our faith, or we are not accepted as true believers unless we believe in all the prophets that they are mentioned in our whole Quran. And most of the majority of them, they have the Jewish names, Abraham, Solomon, David, Yahya or John, as is known in the Bible. So there is so much that we can learn from the life of these prophets, and unfortunately, not too many of Muslims. I cannot say for Christians and Jews, they can speak now, but not too many of us. We learn the lessons and we read our holy book with the intention of really fixing things, as Rabbi mentioned. What is the purpose of your life in this world unless you work and you leave this world better place that you found it? So I do want to mention also the very important message of Martin Luther King when he said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And we should learn to live like brothers, or God forbid, we will perish as fools. So in this month is another opportunity for all of us, instead of speaking ill and conspiracy theories and things that just divides us and separates us. There was so much goodness in each one of us that we really can make this world a much better place that we found it. Hopefully with people and leaders like these that we have them here, we are going to be heading in towards a better place, a better world that we would like to leave it for our kids.
Thank you very much, brother. Amit, I know it's very late in Israel, so I'd like you to share your screen and to speak, please. I know it's very late, and I really appreciate both of you joining us from Israel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Shalom from Israel.
Shalom.
I'm Amit, and I'm here with my partner Amos.
Sorry about the Hebrew. I didn't succeed to change the name to English, but my name is Amos Eyal. Yeah. We are proud to be here, and thank you for having us. I think if we will speak about the Abrahamic Accord agreements and how it's bring us together different religions, we see a lot of steps that going to the right directions. One of the steps we work for long years here in Israel to try and maybe integrate to the society different religions that will be part of the same of the society. Amit took this responsibility, heavy responsibility, and worked on this initiative for the last few years. Amit, you want to tell about it a bit?
Yes, so in the last 8 years, I'm working mostly with the Christian minority in Israel, the Arabic-speaking Christians, in order to integrate them into the Israeli society, to the Jewish majority, in all aspects. But when I say integration, I mean, you can find Christians in Israel as judges in the Supreme Court, directors of hospitals, in academy, in every field, but as individuals. And in 2012, there was some change, a movement that was led by a Greek Orthodox priest from Nazareth, and he called to the Christian to integrate into the Israeli society, to build the state and to strengthen the society together as a collective, not only as individuals, to take responsibility as collective, as representative of the Christian community in Israel, the Arabic speaking Christian community. And I'm happy that I could be part of it. Almost from the first day, I was the project manager of Father Gabriel Nadaf, the priest, for 5 years. And when he decided to go back to the church after 5 years of activity, he announced that he broke the walls of fear and he opened the door, and now someone else should take the lead back to his church. And then me, together with some other Christian guy from the Christian quarter in the old city of Jerusalem, we decided to bring this movement to the small Christian community in Jerusalem. It's a bit different than the Christians in the north of Israel. It's a challenge in Jerusalem, but this is also something very important to do. And if we speak about Abraham, I just want to mention something personal. I have a daughter, my younger daughter. She's 2 years old, and her name is Bakol. What is Bakol? So we read in Genesis 24 that the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things, but in Hebrew we say Adonai berech et Avraham Bakol. Bakol. So Bakol, according to the Talmud, was the daughter of Abraham. And that's how we named our daughter. That's my connection to Abraham. And I'm very glad.
I think we see today a big changes in the society. I think the barriers are falling one by one, and you see the world changing. The agreement is not just by religions. The coalitions is not just by religions today. I think a few years ago it was much more like difficult. Like if you come from the Islam, you think one way. If you came from the Judaism, you think other way. Today, things change, and the reality is changing, and agreements are building. In my day job, I'm running the Israel news agency, TPS, and we're happy to that we have cooperation agreements with many Muslims and Christian countries and media outlets, and we really see a difference. So together with Amit, we thought how we taking these exciting times and how we teaching the next generation about their history, about the Holy Land, about maybe the patriarch, the way of the patriarch. The way of the patriarch, I think it's something that's not so known, that is actual place. It's actual a road that our forefather walked there. Our old forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov. And they 80% of the Bible stories happen there. And we when we understand that, and we understand that people that coming to visit the Holy Land almost don't know about these places, we decide to develop a new board game by the name The Way of the Patriarch, that's supposed to teach the kids or the families about these holy places. It's starting in Beersheba. Beersheba is a city in the south of Israel that Isaac dug there his wells, and he's continued to Hebron. From there to Bet Zechariah, and so many interesting and important places along the way that you study about them in a board game. Now, one of other goals in our board game, it's the idea that you don't play about collecting money. You don't play about who will finish the game first. You're playing about collecting good deeds, collecting and doing good along the way. And this is the mission, I think, in our life. We can each one here or each one in the world have his goal in the end. But it's not just where you're going in the end. It's how you live your life, how you doing good along the way. And that's why what we learn also from our forefathers, from our Bible and from our history. And I think it's something that is common to all our religions, that we need to know how to live our life and how to make good deeds along them. So we try to help families to learn together with their kids through our new board game, and also to live this life with our missions in every step that we're taking along the way.
Okay, thank you very much. Amit, do you want to share the screen with the board game? Do you have it?
Actually, Amot, you can show it.
Yeah, I can show it.
You can show the
Yeah.
box.
No, I will find it 1 second on the screen. It will take me a second. And yeah, we really invest a lot in making sure that it will be in the best quality and will look like we really took an artist that work for for more than a year about design it, and here I can show it. Can I share the screen now?
Yes, you can.
Let's see. Great. Share.
Actually, Abraham, when he arrived to the land of Israel, he first comes to Shechem, and then he goes south on the way of the patriarch, and then he goes north. And actually, the monotheism was developed along the way of the patriarchs.
So here, this is the game. It's starting in Beersheba, like we mentioned. Then it's going to Hebron, and all the painting is actually how the places was or look like today. And you can see in yellow the main road, the way of the patriarch. Of course, it's going through Bethlehem and through Jerusalem. You can see Jerusalem detailed and painted. Bethel with the dream that Jacob dream, and all the way through Shechem, Nablus to Nazareth. Now, like I mentioned, the game is not about who will finish first. So what happened if you close to Nazareth and you didn't collect enough good deeds? You can go back through the Jordan River way that will take you through the Jordan River side back to beginning, and you can continue to collect more deeds, more good deeds. But if you're falling into one of the places on the Jordan River, so you rebirth and you clean yourself, and you need to give back all your cards and starting all from beginning. And again, this is the idea behind all the details here are thinking about education and about learning the Bible. For example, the first mission in Beersheba, it's you need to draw a good deed cards for each well mentioned in Genesis. You need to read the Bible. You need to open it. You need to learn from our history and Bible to play this game. So I hope you can see it and to see the game.
Thank you so much, and your friend. Thank you so much, both of you. I'd like to, first of all, to acknowledge that we are actually in Black History Month, in addition to just celebrating MLK Month. Black History Month recognizes the contributions of African Americans to the society, all they have achieved. And we have the responsibility to know and celebrate the voices and history of Black Americans every day of the year, not just Black History Months. And it should be in all our areas of our life and work. I'd like now to turn across to Professor Dwight Ellis. Hello, could you unmute yourself, please? Hello, Professor, how are you? I'm pleased to meet you.
Fine, it's my pleasure.
Absolutely delighted to meet you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with such scholars and almost revolutionaries, making a great difference in our society. And to be an outlier from many of you are based in New York City, one of our great cities, and of course Israel, where I've always wanted to visit, and maybe one day I'll get a chance to do so. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, it's good to be here as somewhat of a representative of African Americans. I thought there were going to be two others, but I can handle it pretty well. I'm a professor at Bowie State University. Bowie State University is one of what's called the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. There are about 100 of them. For our friends from Israel, they may not know. There are about 100 HBCUs in the United States that were established after the emancipation of African Americans, and largely established by white former slave owners for the education of some of their children. And that changed as the opportunities grew and more Blacks were being taught to read, write, and to blend in society after being emancipated. Many of the Blacks who have achieved very much in this country, to include Dr. Martin Luther King, are graduates of HBCUs. I myself graduated from one that's now called University of the District of Columbia. But more importantly, I have a law degree from George Mason University. And I'm not a practicing attorney like our host here, but I consider myself somewhat of a minor scholar. I did 25 years as a senior vice president with the National Association of Broadcasters, which is a trade association representing the radio and television stations that are owned in the United States. Not minority, not Black, but majority. So my interests lie very much in media, and social media, which is where we are today. And I'm very, very impressed by the game that was presented by our friend from Israel. I think it's very good. I retired from the NAB in 2004, and I did some consulting internationally, and did a bit of travel, not as much as I would like. But one of the places that I did travel to that I think you'll be interested in, I traveled to Spain. And I've been to Spain about 12 times. Unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish. And you might wonder, why would I want to travel to Spain as an African American when many African American professionals or whomever will travel, if they're going to travel outside of the country and they have historical perspectives or interests in who they are or where they've been, would go to sub-Saharan Africa. Well, I've never been to sub-Saharan Africa, but I have been to North Africa. And the reason why I went to Spain or ended up in Spain is because it was during a week of Black History Month, where in this country, many Blacks celebrate the fact that how well we have progressed after emancipation. And Black Americans are very different from Africans. We don't have any temporal power, such as Nigerians or Africans that own about what, 26, 56 countries that are owned in the continent of Africa. We own houses and property in the United States, but we are perhaps the most advanced of the African diaspora. And even though we some of us are poor in the United States, we're probably richer than many other members of the diaspora throughout the world. One of the things that I was concerned about during 1 month of Black History Month is I talked to my friends who are all very successful business people, doctors, lawyers, whatever, and we talked about how well our descendants had done, despite the fact that we were slaves in this country and we grew beyond that. We invented many things, and we've done quite a bit. We've even had, to this point, an African American who's been president of the United States and now a vice president. That's great. That's wonderful. But still, with all that, I believe that many Blacks have a hole in their soul, despite the monies that they may have, despite the advancement that we've made in social media and entertainment and the wealthy people that we have in New York that all of you celebrate, and all that. However, when we travel to other countries and we're admired or we're held in derision because maybe we haven't advanced as far as many of our European brothers and sisters, despite what we've achieved, where did we come from? And I had an argument or a big discussion with some of my friends years ago about the year 2004, when I said, everyone throughout, you can't name a country or think of a continent where the people were not enslaved someplace in their history. So it's not unusual to be enslaved or to be a slave, whether you're in Europe, Asia, or wherever. What is the difference between African Americans? Well, there had to have been a time, I thought, when Black people or people of the African diaspora were major players on the world stage, not in a jungle somewhere, not being a king of some tribe in some country in Africa. Something happened way back at the beginning where people of the African diaspora made a real impact on the planet. And people kind of remember, and it frightens them, or they worry about it, or they think about it. And where was it? And I said, it had to have been during the Moorish invasion of Spain. And so what I did, I started reading. I started with the book that I recommend for many of you if you've not. There's a scholar by the name of Dr. Ivan van Sertima, who was an expert at the Rutgers University on Islamic Spain. And he had there were many scholars there, and many of them are still there. And they studied the progressions, the development of Jews and Blacks in Spain. And what happened after the invasion of 7/11, when the North Africans invaded Spain and settled in much of southern Spain for about 800 years. For 800 years, North Africans and Jews pretty much ruled southern Spain. And you know that history. I tell you that most African Americans do not know that history. They don't know what happened in Spain for 800 years and the contributions that were made by Jews and North Africans working together, and how the Catholic Church was very much upset by what happened in southern Spain. Incidentally, I happen to be a Catholic. I'm a Catholic who wanted to be a priest. So you have to understand that I'm very, I feel very close to Jewish philosophy and what Judaism contributed with the three Abrahamic religions. So I went to Spain, and not only did I read about 19 books that were written by Jewish and Islamic scholars about what went on in Spain, but I made about 14 or 15 trips there by myself without speaking any Spanish. And one place that I always visited, the Alhambra. And I know most of you know what the Alhambra is. The whole history of what I make reference to is there. And every time I would walk through the portals of the Alhambra, tears would come to my eyes because I feel a link to that. I came back and I shared that information with many of my African-American friends, many of whom have never even heard of the Alhambra. They have no idea of the contributions that their ancestors made with the Jewish community in Spain and what evolved beyond that, the Renaissance, the Age of Reason, you know, and how the wisdom of the Jewish scholars and the Islamic scientists, what they contributed to the development of the world that we live in today. So I could say many things, but I want you to know where I'm basically coming from. I'm glad to be here as the sole representative. But I think that one of the many things that we must begin to do as we talk about bringing Blacks and Jews closer together, I think education is very important, but a historical linkage that has to go beyond much of what I know, much of what I know is being talked about and used today. So I would be prepared to make some suggestions and listen more to what you've done and in your scholarship. Thank you very much. I'll stop at this point.
Thank you very much, Professor Ellis. Reverend Pastor Paul Devez. Hello, how are you?
Some. I am blessed and then some. Great to be on
that's
this
great.
panel.
Yes, I'd like to put a question to you. As children of Abraham, are we more united? Are we divided? Is there more that unites us than divides us? What is your perspective, Reverend DeVries?
Well, that's a tough question, I think. So I'll answer in a kind of yes and no combination as a good scholar. I'm a professional philosopher too, with
Yes, I know that.
PhD in philosophy from University of Virginia. And by the way, a lot of people talk about Charlottesville and the crises there 3 or 4 years ago. Well, I was many years before that, I was in the middle of crises there, coping with the KKK that had their headquarters just a half a mile from the parsonage where I was pastoring as a pastor there, just southeast of Charlottesville, in the largest church in that region. But so what is the answer here? I think there's so much that we do share. These Abrahamic religions share a great respect for the book, Bible and Quran, and the need in the power of words, the power of communication, the power of prayer. So this shared focus on language, this shared elevation through language, and certainly one God, the belief in monotheism, very strong, of course, among Christians and Jews and Muslims. Sometimes people try to judge Christians because of our reference to the mystery of God being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but never has there a basis for saying that we're not monotheistic, very committed to the one God represented so well in the prophets and leaders in the Hebrew scriptures, and especially in Jesus. The one other way that we are united is in a man that we haven't mentioned, but who was very significant in Abraham's life, and that is Melchizedek. Melchizedek, we don't know his ethnicity. He wasn't Jewish because at the time of Melchizedek giving a blessing to Abraham and receiving Abraham's tithe and providing a sacred meal for Abraham and his workers and soldiers. At that time, there were only two Jews, Abraham and Sarah. So it's a kind of a mystery. There's no record of who his parents were, what his lineage was. And at the same time, he is a giant in terms of introducing a whole new way of talking. And what is that? Throughout the Bible, up until Melchizedek is mentioned at the end of Genesis 14, there are many times where God blesses people and says that, through people, other people would be blessed, as in first covenant with Abraham. But Melchizedek does something different. He himself blesses Abraham. So one human blessing another human. The first time we have a record of that is Melchizedek blessing Abraham. And so we're all recipients of that blessing from Melchizedek to our shared father, Abraham. And this links very powerfully with Dr. Martin Luther King also. When you read his sermons, read his Bible studies, read his lectures, the common theme is this affirmation of respect for other people, not just to feel the respect, but to speak that respect, to point out our linkage with other people, to be proactive as the family of God, not just have a nice attitude about, hey, we're all one family, and then that attitude can evaporate fast, but instead being totally proactive in our language, in our actions, even with people that are hurting us, even with people that harm us. And this radical sense of blessing other people. By the way, what is a blessing? Well, barak in Hebrew is translated in the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures as eulogize, which, in modern culture, we think of, saying nice things about someone that's dead at their funeral or through obituary or whatever. But this idea of eulogize is unique in the scriptures, where good things are said to a person while they're alive and while they're there to hear it, to actually literally hear the good things we say. And these eulogies, this blessing is always something positive we say, not based on what a person has accomplished. So I say everyone's presentation has been interesting. I praise everybody for this excellent panel. That's still not a blessing. A blessing is always saying something about the person and the person's future success, or the person as who that person is as a child of God, as an image of God, as a likeness of God. And that deep radical praise. So even if someone hates you, even if, as Jesus said, really applying Melchizedek to the next level, Jesus said, if anyone curses you, bless them in return. Look for something radical to say positively, not just about that person, but to that person. And that was Dr. King's style. When someone would hit him, someone would say abusive things, he would turn around and say something uplifting, because he was representing God, because he's a child of God among children of God that don't really fulfill that role very well, and among those that do. So this gift of Melchizedek, of one person giving this radical transformative praise called Barak, its family name perhaps is related to that keyword Barak. And a former president, Barack Obama. So that word's been around, but to go to this radical meaning saying something good, something uplifting, something empowering to someone, not based on their achievements or anything that we see particularly good, but because of our radical belief that people are God's children, people have a hopeful future, and by our speaking and acting, we can help set people on the right path, even if they just cursed us, even if they punched us in the nose. And that nonviolence of Dr. King has a root, I believe, in certainly Jesus' teaching about blessing those that curse us, and in Melchizedek, who was the first to act on, radical praise to other people. That I'm a beneficiary of that. I won't take the time to tell you my life story, but I was teacher's pest. I was the worst kid in the school. I was always kept after school for bad behavior. And I was 4 years behind in school when I was in 6th grade. But one teacher had a whole different approach to speak only good things to me, to just constantly say, you can do this. I know you will achieve. You will be a great student. And just saying things that made no sense, I had never heard before, but transformed my life. And I was a straight A student within a year because of that amazing. Now, she tutored me a little too, or significantly tutored me, but it was that attitude that no one else had shown me, this Melchizedek attitude, this Jesus attitude, this Abrahamic faith attitude of saying, speaking hope and purpose and value into other people who may be acting rotten and stinky and violent against us, but to speak and act positively, creatively to them. And I think it's one of our biggest treasures in the Abrahamic tradition, emphasized, I think, very effectively also by Jesus, and is transformative to lots of us, and me included. So as we celebrate Dr. King, let's not forget this aggressive, positive, transformative language and behavior to literally respect everybody, however nasty or evil or violent they are against us. May God help us to live up to Melchizedek.
Thank you very much, Pastor Paul.
As well.
Thank you very much, Pastor Paul. I'd like to ask a question for the three main religions, and you can come in this as well, Pastor Paul, and also Rabbi Potasnik and the Imam. The three main faiths, do we still stand hand in hand post the civil rights movement, more particularly in view of the current social challenges we're facing, both in the United States and also globally, namely that of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and also the persecution of Christians globally? Are we united? Are we standing hand in hand? Are we loving our brothers? Over to you, Rabbi Potasnik.
Thank you so much for that question. We have, over the years, developed relationships that have brought us closer to one another to such an extent that I know, for example, when there's an attack on a synagogue, one of the first people to reach out to me will be Imam or Reverend DeVry. I know I'm going to hear from people of other faiths who say you're not going to stand alone. History has taught us, Elie Wiesel said the tragedy of the Holocaust was that you could get away with it. The fact that you could kill people with impunity was shocking. So I think, yes, we are finding today that in the fight against anti-Semitism, people of other faith communities stand with us. Not always, not in all places, but I can tell you this, that when there is any kind of desecration of any house of worship, regardless of the faith, we find a way to come together. And I think it's predicated on the fact that we look at each other as as family, which means you don't just react when there's a tragedy. You also are there for one another in celebrations of life. So I would say that there is, in keeping with that Abrahamic spirit, we try to make a difference. And the difference is that when people see faith communities standing together, they realize that they have a battle in front of them. It's much easier to stand up for your own when your own are being attacked, but when you stand up for others, that to me is the real meaning of commitment. That's why Abraham stood up for the cities. So yes, I would say we're not, was somebody said the civil rights movement, we're not where we want to be, we're not where we're going to be, but thank God we're not where we used to be. So we are better than where we were, and hopefully we'll continue to strengthen that communication and commitment to each other.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Could I
yes.
ask, I put the question to you, Imam. Salam alaikum, brother. Could you answer that question, more particularly as regards Islamophobia?
Yes. As Rabbi Potasnik mentioned, we are a group of clergy leaders here in New York City that we stand together against any sentiment of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and against hate generally. When the killing of Muslims happened in New Zealand, guess what? A very early morning at around 6 o'clock, the first person to call me and offer the support was Rabbi Potasnik. And imagine at that very early time. That time we Muslims, we have a very early prayer we call Salat al-Fajr. So at that time I received a call from Rabbi Potasnik telling me that he heard the news and what we could do in order to show support for the Muslim community. And not only our support for in times of crisis, but we here as a Muslim community, the Jewish community, and the Christian community in New York City, we have gone a little bit further, not waiting for something to happen, but we make things, positive things happening ahead of time, like celebrating, for example, the Seder is something that in New York City is done very often. And I can speak from my center, Albanian Islamic Cultural Center here in Staten Island, New York. We've been doing celebrating the Seder with our Jewish brothers and Christian brothers for almost 2 decades. And I can say that proudly that my mosque is, our mosque is the first mosque that I know here in New York City. If there is, I would love to hear. We do have a twinning between our mosque and the Temple of Israel here in Staten Island. So we fight Islamophobia with unity with Jewish and Christian brothers, and we fight the racism also with having very close relationship with the church next door to our mosque is Our Lady of Good Counsel, the Catholic Church. But the other side of the street, or just 2 blocks away from my mosque, is Mount Sinai Church, which is a common friend between me and Rabbi Potasnik, Bishop Victor Brown. So we have a lot of celebrations together. We celebrate, the month of Ramadan. We do have a special event that night. Is a great event for our Muslim community. So yes, we fight those hated acts of whether against Muslims or Jews, but we do much more than that. When we are in the time that we're trying to be creative in terms of bringing our efforts together. We work very closely with the Jewish community here in Staten Island, with the President Kojo organization here called Kojo, Rabbi Mendy Morazli. We deliver food together, Muslims and Jews and Christians. So we are much better than lots of other communities, other cities. as Rabbi Ptasnik mentioned, we are not yet where we would like to be, but we are heading towards that direction. Hopefully that will be soon.
Thank you very much. Could I put that question across to Pastor Paul, please?
Sure, sure.
The
And
persecution of Christians. I know you've done a lot of work on that.
yes, and just a quick announcement. I got a text message from Joseph Jones that was to be on this call.
Mhm.
And he asked me to apologize to everyone, but there's an emergency situation where he had to take his father to the hospital. So otherwise he would have joined us. So his apologies.
Okay.
But absolutely, I think New York is itself an amazing place where people work together and talk together. There's a lot more that we can do to be unified, absolutely. But open door attitudes. Rabbi Potasnik and I have co-sponsored a roundtable of evangelicals and Jewish leaders. And we've not only sponsored it, I think the best part is that we do things together too. We've stood together at protests and demonstrations that were important, especially for Jewish people. Evangelicals stood with them. Issues related to evangelical concerns, Jewish leaders standing with us. So it's been a mutual relationship and based especially on listening to one another at the roundtable meetings and then acting together. So I'm very encouraged. We have a long ways to go, but America is a great place where we can work together more intimately than religious situations in other places. But exciting to hear about these partnerships in Israel too that our brothers talked about with Gabriel Nadal. What a giant of a man he was
Yes,
there
he
in
is.
Nazareth. So
Yes.
we met him through, we evangelical leaders
Did
in New
you?
York met him through Rabbi Potasnik. So talk about,
Yeah.
collaboration.
Yeah,
Potasnik is the man who unites us the most.
well, that's very kind of you. Let me just add something to this. I think back to the tragedy in Charlottesville, when there were
Yeah.
right-wing Nazis were marching, Jews will not replace us. You should know, the story was not reported enough, that Christians came forward and formed a protective ring around the synagogue in that area and said, you want to get them? You got to go through us. When
Yeah.
mosques were attacked, we took a number of people, Jewish and Christian, and formed a protective ring around the Islamic Center at NYU and around other mosques in New York. Coptic Christians who were attacked in Egypt, we stood with them. We have Reverend Paul and Imam Tahir. We stood with them. We said, we are not going to close our eyes to your pain because, we often say those who close their eyes never see tears. So the tears of other people, something that resonates within us. When we talk about Abrahamic faith, talk about the Bible, the word holiness is something that is pervasive. What is holiness? It doesn't mean to segregate yourself from others. Holiness means that you have to stand a little bit higher. You have to reach a little bit higher. You have to do things in a way that impacts human life, not only for your own, but for other people. So I'd like to think, in response to your question, that we have done much together. We will do more. And in terms of the relation with the African American community, I think we're now recognizing, New York and around the country, that for too long there's been a divide. For too long, people in these communities have had issues, for example, disparities in health with other communities, and we didn't do anything about it. COVID exposed the inequalities, the injustices of the healthcare system. COVID exposed the inequities in the digital divide. There are families out there that don't have computers. They don't have access to the internet. And I think we're recognizing that we have a responsibility to them too. and trying to better their lives. So yes, things are better, but there's a lot of room for improvement too.
I'd like to hand across to Professor Ellis, since you represent the African American community here. I'd like
Yes.
to hear your perspective. Sorry, it was by accident. I'd like to hear your perspective. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to add, you know, there's no disagreement with anything that anyone has said. As a professor, I've been teaching 15 years at Bowie State University. I teach undergraduates and graduates in communications. One of the most fascinating vehicles for change and bringing people together certainly is media, social media. But within social media, YouTube, I can't begin to tell you. For example, I'll tell you, I watch bloggers. Do you know what a blogger? A blogger is a person, is a blogger who uses video. They walk around with cameras recording what goes on in the various communities. There are at least two bloggers in New York City that I watch, channels that are so incredibly important. I've learned so much about the various communities, religious and non-religious communities of New York City and the various boroughs from what I've learned from these vloggers. For example, one of the areas within the Jewish faith that I have a great deal of interest in are the Hasidic Jews. And I understand generally what the Hasidic Jews are about, but a very large community within New York City impacting very strongly, and certainly during the pandemic and all that. Well, there's a Christian blogger who for the past 3 months recorded some absolutely incredible vlogs on the Hasidic communities in the various parts of Brooklyn and Queens. And he was allowed within various aspects of the community where no one has basically been before. And I learned so much about it and how strong that community is. And for example, I just want to use one example that I didn't know, and all of you I'm sure know this. In New York City, apparently, I don't know the name of it, but they have a system, a volunteer system, where they have services available to not only members of the Hasidic community, whether it's ambulance service or repairing a tire or whatever, available to the Hasidic Jewish community, but also to those outside of the community. And I had no idea of it. And I said, you mean to tell me that if an African-American family in Queens or whatever has to go to the hospital, there's a problem, and there happens to be a Jewish family next door who may be Hasidic or knows of this service, they will call this volunteer service, and I see the rabbi up the top. People should know of this. Yeah. There are people all over the world who watch these vloggers, who tune into New York City, which is one of the great cities of our country, with all of its diversity. And you talk about coming together. I think that is the vehicle that we need to focus on in educating our community about how close we are and how closely we work together. I just wanted to add that.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is a classic example. And I'm sure you're all aware, I'm actually from London, but I love New York. I love New York City. And my favorite neighborhood, pre-COVID, you'll always see me hanging out at Crown Heights with the Hasidic community. I'm a regular feature there, and also at the Ohel in Queens. People tend to forget the diversity and also the interrelation, the way we relate with different communities. And I've always felt welcome at Crown Heights and also in the Ohel. And I lived actually some time ago in Borough Park, and I integrated with the Jewish community. I was invited to speak at certain events. I'm a very good friend of Ezra Freelander. It's something that I feel that people as a whole should realize the warmth of the Jewish people, the way that you'll be accepted into the community, and also the Muslim community as well. As I say, London is a very diverse country. I've interacted a great deal with the Muslim community in London, from different countries, North Africa, also from Albania, Iman. We interact a lot in London. We don't have so much of this social division. I'd like also to turn across to Amit, if you have anything else to say, and also to point out that I actually met Amit through Nadif, the Gabriel. I actually met him through you because he was actually at one of my events a few years ago at the United Nations, and it was through him that I met Amit, and we've kept in touch over the years. And I'm very grateful for your friendship, Amit, and I must commend you for what you do and what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I can say that I'm really glad that we met, and again, that's thanks to Father Gabriel again. And,
yes, it is.
And that's the bridges we are all talking about now. People are standing up, taking responsibility, speaking for their community, encouraging the young generation to make the right steps, to change the reality, and to respect each other. That's the basic. We need to respect each other. And from there, we can move on together. And I think we see that in the last months in the Middle East, not only in Israel, we see the changes in the Middle East. I can tell you that we really, as Israelis, we hope that we will see more of that. And thanks to people who decided that it's about time to make something else. And that's besides the different interests, political interests and others, it's all based on respecting each other. We have one God, and we must learn to live together. There's no other choice.
Amen.
We must be aware that we're all interconnected. We're all related. We're all knitted. I believe we're all knitted together in a fabric, in a garment. And we have to live peacefully. We have to live in peace in this world. And we have to build bridges of peace, as we're doing exactly right now. And there's more that actually unites us, I believe, than actually divides us. And when we look past the color of the skin, the different religion, the different beliefs, we can actually live in a happy world. We can really make a difference in this world. And more particularly in view of what's happened recently here in the United States on the 6th of January, I think it was a wake-up call for everybody. It is a wake-up call for all of us. The emergence of the white supremacists, as there's a saying, there's a saying that it starts with the Jews. Then it goes on to different ethnic origins and different religions. So I believe that as part of the Abrahamic family, we have to unite, we have to stand by each other, and because basically we're all in it together. And there's a saying that united we stand, we're much stronger than if we were divided or living in our own comfort zone and forgetting everybody else. So basically I believe as we come into the 21st century, and also more particularly 2021, we need to be united. We need to stand together. There shouldn't be any division. We should all be together because we're all in this world together, and we have to make a difference. That's all I like to say. Pastor Paul, I see you're itching. You want to say something?
No, I just
I
think
know you so well.
the beautiful sharing of ideas here. But a nagging question I have, if we could go back, what is the name of that wonderful game that helps us to
Oh, yes.
relive
Amit,
Prophet's
over to
Walk?
you, Amit.
The name, the way of the patriarchs. Way of the
Ah.
patriarchs. Yeah, that's the way from Beersheba to Nazareth along the back of the mountains of Judea, Samaria, of course, crossing Jerusalem, Jezreel Valley, and then climb to the Galilee to Nazareth. Around 80% of the events in the Bible, in the stories in the Bible, took place along this way.
Okay.
So that's where we're all coming from.
Yes.
And Amos and myself, we grew up on this way.
And I think so. It's so important. I've done some writing with fun activities related to the scriptures too. Nothing like what you're doing, but nevertheless, we need to make these exciting for the children and for families, and to really have a breakthrough of awakening this rich heritage that we have through the patriarchs. And I'd like to encourage people to include Melchizedek in our understanding, though we don't usually list him as a patriarch. He's probably not on your game, but maybe another game we could include Melchizedek.
May I?
Sorry, Iman, you'd like to say something?
Yes, thank you. Can we have that game somehow? That we do have an Islamic school, and I would like to have that lesson and share that with our students. And another thing is that as a clergy here in New York City, I have learned so much that I would love to share this, knowledge that we have. I have gained it through the experience of 2 decades, and I have learned that clergies, whether rabbis or imams or priests, they do have the spiritual authority to make things much better. And what I can attest is that people that I know here in New York City are people of dignity, and they will say the truth the way they know it, and they would have very much, good response or positive response from the people, because they know that this rabbi or that imam or that bishop or father, he says what he believes, not because he's been appointed by the certain president or a certain minister or a certain king, but because he believes in that knowledge and that faith of his, and that faith of his will make things much better. So this forum of ours tonight, I would love to see it in the international level, especially as brother mentioned. Yes, there are some very good positive signs in Middle East and Israel is being much more accepted by the way, yesterday was the agreement between Kosovo, my country, and Israel, officially, that we have exchanged the embassies. So the acceptance is much more there. And all what we need is people of credibility that when they speak, people they know that you are not speaking because the politics wants you to say it that way, but they know that this is the better way. Nobody's pushing you. Nobody's giving you a check that say this or say that. I'm totally committed into this, activity, because I know that this is the only way and the best way to bring people together with people of credibility. And everybody wants to be in a better position. I don't want to feel afraid that my son is going down the road and somebody will know that this is the son of the imam and will jump on him or beat him. I want to create an environment that is welcoming. And the best people, I believe, that will resonate much, in a positive way around the world are people, leaders in United States of America, clergy leaders, because they are independent and they are people of, dignity, and people that they have honor, and people that they have knowledge.
Amen.
All right.
Yes, I can second that. Yeah, I second what you have to say. Sorry, Professor Ellis, would you like to say something? Could you unmute yourself?
Sorry, you were talking to me?
Yes, Professor.
Oh, yes. No, I love this discussion. And I would like to see more. Oh, one thing I would recommend, something that's very different now in the civil rights movement or whatever. We need to acknowledge the presence of women. We are now in an age where women are really influencing a great deal of our society today through social media, through whatever, even politically. And I think to the degree that we involve more young women or women in general in these discussions, I think it would help tremendously. I mean, after all, was Hagar and Sarah and
Rachel.
And Rachel, yeah, and of course, and Khadijah, how strong women have been throughout history, the history of our faith, and the wives of our leaders, our spiritual leaders. They need to be acknowledged, and we should have a representation of at least one woman among us to give us their.
I'm here.
Yeah, of course. No, you're in charge. No, I get it. No. I think
I'm usually only the woman in the room.
Oh yeah, but we have all of that. I'm sure is going to be changed. And I might mention this, and I'm sure everyone knows this. I am fascinated by what I call the Reformation of Islam, which is being noticed through the changes that are going on in Saudi Arabia. Positive changes in Saudi Arabia. The younger people are transforming Saudi Arabia into a new sort of society, more open.
May I?
Go right
yes,
ahead.
Yeah. Okay,
thank you for bringing that. And I have, the permission from my mentor, when it comes to Islam, to speak a little bit. I hate dictators. I hate dictators. And those dictators that they caught the guy in the embassy, it's very, doubtful that will do anything good to humanity. But Islam has been hijacked in very, very special places, kind of like purposely to put a dim, image, ugly image about Islam. Professor mentioned his visit to Alhambra and Granada and these beautiful places. There is another image. There is another unity image between Jews and Christians. Jews and Muslims. The way they were, working, and the way they were made Spain of those days, or Granada, so prosperous country that most of the Western countries, they used to go and study there. And the scholar that we Muslims still is one of the references that we understand our Islamic philosophy is Maimonides, the Jewish philosopher that he was born in Granada. Thank you for mentioning that. 1135 to 1204, which he died in Egypt. I love that person. He made Muslims understand Islamic philosophy. He is the crown philosopher of Jews and Christians. There's so much of these good people. We need to bring them in the stage.
Right. You know, if I could just add, I
Yes,
know
Rabbi.
it's getting late, and I think I would just add that thanks to Imam, we were able to meet the head of a Holocaust studies program at a college in New York. Now, there are many Holocaust studies programs. What made this particularly unique was the head of the Holocaust program at the college is Muslim. Now, when you have that kind of development, you realize you're living at a different time. So I think with education, and I agree with having more women, we can't have just manels, just men on panels. We need to be far more sensitive and hear the voices of others who have much to add to the conversation. So thank you so much for bringing us together. Look forward to future
Thank you, Rabbi.
discussions, and I walk away feeling optimistic. There's hope for the future, as the prophet said, because there are people who want to see a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I have another meeting I need to go to, but thank
Yes, I
you
think we
all
better wrap it up.
for your participation.
Okay.
Thanks
Yes.
very much.
Do
Uh-oh.
you connect to Lily Friedman?
Which who? Alex?
Lily Friedman.
I know the name, but we're all
Brooklyn.
connected. We're all connected.
Ah, okay.
All right,
That's
just
true.
contact me. Whoever you need to locate through Jewish geography,
You
we'll
can
find
find.
a person. All right.
End it.
And